At the beginning of the film, a woman is seen falling into the ocean, floating until she suddenly opens her eyes in a panic. It turns out that it was just a dream, Brandon's dream. Brandon is the bodyguard of a governor's daughter named Ava. He has worked for her since she was a child, making their relationship more like that of an uncle and niece. That morning, Brandon and Ava arrive at the airport where Ava meets her boyfriend Jed and her best friend Kyle, as the three plan to go on vacation together. Both of her friends feel uncomfortable with Brandon's presence, but Ava explains that her father wouldn't allow her to travel without security. After boarding the plane, Ava chooses to sit with her friends in the economy class since the flight is relatively empty. She observes the activities of the other passengers in front of her. As the plane takes off, there is mild turbulence, which is still within a normal range. A while later, the left engine strikes a flock of birds, causing another bout of turbulence. However, a flight attendant named Danilo reassures the passengers. Unexpectedly, the turbulence intensifies, and the left engine starts to break apart and catch fire due to the bird strike. Over the loudspeaker, the pilot instructs all passengers, including the crew, to take their seats and fasten their seatbelts, triggering a wave of panic. Suddenly, the propeller shatters, hitting the aircraft's fuselage and creating a massive hole. A piece of debris strikes Brandon's body, and one by one, the passengers nearby are sucked out of the plane while others desperately try to save their loved ones. Unfortunately, the suction is too strong. As a flight attendant tries to help other passengers, ironically, she too gets pulled out of the plane willingly. After losing many passengers, the plane loses speed and crashes into the ocean, causing a chain reaction of deaths. The hole in the midsection allows water to rush in, making the aircraft lose buoyancy and sink to the ocean floor. Fortunately, the rear section remains dry, leaving Ava, her two friends, and a flight attendant alive, although Kyle suffers a broken arm. Panicked, the four of them stare toward the front of the plane, listening to strange noises surrounding them. Unexpectedly, Brandon is still alive and emerges, carrying Rosa and her grandmother, Marty. Marty, who has stopped breathing from being underwater too long, receives CPR from Danilo. After several attempts, Marty is finally revived. It's important to note that drowning victims can be resuscitated if they have been underwater for less than 8 minutes using cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. Rosa then asks about her grandfather, but Brandon explains to her and Marty that he couldn't save him in time. The remaining survivors are in a state of panic until Brandon calms them with his strong leadership skills. He reassures them that the available air supply should last until rescuers arrive and advises them to stay put and remain calm. Ava checks her phone, which unsurprisingly has no signal. She suggests that they might be able to escape through the hole in the fuselage. However, Brandon warns that this could be dangerous, as they don't know how deep the plane has sunk. He insists that waiting is the best option for now. Danilo supports Brandon's explanation, stating that the pilot must have reported the engine failure, meaning rescue teams should already be on their way. Brandon then instructs everyone to conserve oxygen by minimizing movement. Danilo recalls that the aircraft is equipped with small oxygen tanks. Unfortunately, both oxygen tanks are empty, suggesting that the plane's equipment inspection was poorly conducted. At that moment, Marty realizes that a nearby passenger had brought a medical oxygen tank. Brandon decides to retrieve it. Before diving, Marty asks him to bring back her husband's hat. As Brandon swims, he sees several drowned passengers. After retrieving the hat, he remains unaware that a massive shark is circling the wreckage. Brandon eventually finds the oxygen tank. As he attempts to return, the shark enters through the fuselage hole and lunges at him. Brandon's prolonged absence makes the others anxious, especially when strange bubbles appear on the water's surface. Fortunately, Brandon resurfaces, but unexpectedly, he instructs everyone to stay away from the water while discreetly hiding his severe leg injury. In critical condition, he hands over the hat, places the oxygen tank down, and apologizes to Ava for failing to protect her. As he urges everyone to stay away from the water, Brandon is suddenly dragged under. The survivors watch in horror as the shark's tail thrashes above the surface, confirming that Brandon has been devoured. Out of fear, everyone finally decided to move to the very back of the cabin to stay away from the water. following Brandon's instructions and hoping that the rescue team would arrive soon. Marty, a former combat medic, decided to treat Kyle's broken arm using a splint and temporary bone relocation. Near the plane crash site, a rescue helicopter prioritizing Ava's safety, since she was the daughter of a governor, had yet to find any signs of survivors. Back in the water, everyone could hear and feel the plane shifting, signaling that water could flood the entire cabin at any moment. Although Jed seemed like a tough guy, he appeared to be the most pessimistic about survival. Danilo released oxygen from a tank for a few seconds in the cabin. At that moment, they noticed the water turning noticeably red, indicating that sharks were feasting on the bodies of passengers still strapped to their seats. Suddenly, the plane shook as the shark randomly rammed into it while circling around. Rosa was terrified, but Ava comforted her, assuring her that the rescue team would arrive soon. Unfortunately, the helicopter still hadn't found anything, and its fuel was gradually running low. With only a few hours left before the cabin was completely submerged, periodic creaking noises convinced them that they didn't have much time. Sure enough, the plane started descending into the unknown depths, disappearing into darkness. Fortunately, the descent was halted when the aircraft got stuck on a pile of coral rocks. However, this new position brought the water even closer to them, and they realized the plane could slip further down at any moment. Everyone agreed that their only chance of survival was to swim to the surface. However, they needed to figure out a way to avoid the sharks. Rosa recalled from her school lessons that sharks dislike air bubbles. Despite this information, they still faced the issue of their individual abilities to hold their breath underwater. At that moment, Kyle remembered that some passengers had boarded with full diving gear. Danilo explained that if the gear was indeed on board, it would be in the rear cargo hold, which was already submerged. However, he added that the oxygen tanks were likely empty, as aviation regulations prohibited carrying them fully filled. Ava speculated that there might still be some oxygen left in the tanks, but Jed remained pessimistic, causing Ava to step aside into the restroom to gather her thoughts. As the creaking noises grew louder, she made up her mind, stepping out to reassure Rosa, telling her that fear was a normal feeling. Meanwhile, outside, the rescue helicopter had only 15 minutes of fuel left. Just then, they finally spotted the wreckage. 2 divers were deployed, and it didn't take them long to locate the aircraft, as some of its lights were still on. As the divers approached, Ava and the others waved excitedly at them. One rescuer entered through a hole in the fuselage, while the other remained outside, signaling that everything would be okay. Unexpectedly, a shark swam past behind the diver, prompting Ava and the others to frantically try to warn him. The diver turned around but saw nothing. However, as he turned back toward the survivors, the shark struck from the side, killing him instantly. Moments later, the survivors watched in horror as the shark left behind a severed leg, seemingly saving it for later. Realizing that the second diver was missing, they assumed he had been eaten as well. Outside, the helicopter was running out of fuel, forcing the captain to return to base after sending the coordinates of the crash site, so another helicopter could arrive within an hour. Back inside the plane, Ava remembered that the other diver's body had made it inside, meaning his oxygen tank could still be useful. She briefly dove down, spotting the diver's faint silhouette, which made her smile slightly. Jed tried to get a closer look from above, but he suddenly slipped and fell into the water. Panic ensued when he didn't immediately resurface. However, he eventually emerged, laughing as he played a prank on them. Before Jed could fully get out of the water, a shark bit him, sending everyone into chaos. Jed struggled to free himself while the others rushed to pull him out of the water. Unfortunately, his right leg had been completely severed. Amid the panic, Rosa was asked to wait behind a curtain while Marty treated Jed's wound using a belt. Marty applied a tourniquet to stop the bleeding, while Jed was devastated by his permanent injury. Still determined to retrieve the diving equipment, Ava finally decided to go after it. Danilo opened the door leading to the cargo hold, which was already flooded. Nevertheless, Ava proceeded, using a flare to search for the bag containing the gear. After some time, she found the bag. However, a squid unexpectedly emerged, wrapping its tentacles around her. The flare went out, causing everyone to panic. Luckily, Ava managed to escape its grip and brought the diving gear back with her. They quickly unpacked the bag but found only 4 complete sets of diving equipment. Just then, the loud creaking of the plane intensified, signaling that it was shifting again. They knew they had to make a decision quickly. Meanwhile, while everyone was busy, Jed had taken his final breath just minutes earlier. Ava was heartbroken and attempted CPR, but it was too late. Danilo comforted her as she broke down. Without warning, the aircraft shifted again, descending further. Fortunately, it stopped at the edge of an underwater cliff, with its nose almost completely detached. The water kept rising, filling the back room, meaning their demise was only minutes away based on Rosa's information. Ava said that the raft inflator pump could create air bubbles to keep the shark away when it got close. However, Kyle was concerned about the distance to the surface, which might be too far, requiring them to hold their breath for a long time. Since the others weren't as pessimistic as Kyle, Ava began preparing the equipment and gathering the aircraft's flotation devices. Unexpectedly, the upper part of the room started leaking, indicating that the space would soon collapse completely. Everyone then put on their swimsuits except for Marty, as there were only 4 suits available. Once they were ready, they started entering the water one by one, while the front of the plane was already completely broken apart. Suddenly, the aircraft's body began sinking into the trench. At that moment, Marty asked Ava to take care of Rosa. Swimming at the front, Ava saw the approaching shark's snout and immediately created bubbles. Fortunately, the bubbles did keep the predator away. Once the path seemed clear, Ava and Rosa continued their dive. Danilo followed, then Kayla also entered the water. Unexpectedly, as the 4 of them left, Marty decided to stay behind, feeling incapable of continuing and choosing to remain with her late husband. Meanwhile, Kyle panicked and climbed up to the ceiling where a small air pocket remained, prompting Danilo to try and calm him down. Out of nowhere, the shark returned and immediately attacked Kyle, just as he was about to move forward, eliminating him. Terrified, Danilo swam ahead and met up with Ava and Rosa, who had stopped after finding a scuba tank to extend their breath. Danilo signaled that no one else was coming from behind. After taking turns using the extra oxygen, Danilo and Rosa successfully exited the plane and inflated their rafts to reach the surface. Unfortunately, just as Ava was about to inflate hers, the shark returned, preventing her from escaping for the time being. Luckily, the shark didn't notice Ava, who remained motionless in front of it. However, a flick of the shark's tail knocked her goggles off, disrupting her vision. As she attempted to exit, another shark entered, forcing Ava to escape through the front section of the plane. Unexpectedly, the aircraft plunged deeper into the trench, creating a suction effect that pulled Ava backward as she swam toward the front opening. Determined not to die without a fight, she grabbed onto the seats, finally managing to escape before the plane dragged her into the abyss. However, as soon as she inflated her raft, Ava lost consciousness from holding her breath too long. Fortunately, the raft successfully carried her to the surface, and she was able to breathe again on her own. Upon regaining consciousness, Ava looked around, finding only Rosa's doll floating nearby. Moments later, a rescue helicopter approached before any sharks could attack. Danilo and Rosa were already there, and when Rosa asked about her grandmother, Ava was forced to reveal the truth. As a farewell to her grandparents, Rosa left her beloved doll behind and embraced Ava. The film then comes to an end. See you in the next video.